Please welcome our author, Bill Coles. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming out to Forest in Ealing. It's good to see so many. Breaking news: Sharks are still top of the league, but they are a rogue in this Scottish Championship season to some extent, breaking the dominance of the old firm. We are here to discuss our own rogue. Was Palace, was Eton, it is now Movie Rogue. Bill, to begin, could you please introduce yourself to the Why Read Me live audience?
Well, first of all, thank you all so much for coming. I am a reformed tabloid journalist. I'm number one as the scum sucker, and now I am an author. And it takes some time to learn how to be an author. Ian Banks, great writer, correctly said that the first million words write a shit. Well, I have done my million words, and now we're on to about 2 minutes. So the book's
And the book we are discussing today is, of course, Movie Rogue. This is the third installment in the Rogue series. Can you just introduce the Rogue series?
The Rogue series. It has never been done before. This is a rom-com, and most rom-coms, you wouldn't believe it, are by women. And I am a member of the Romantic Novelists Association, of which the male membership, since my buddy John died, is now down to 0.9%. So there are very few guys having a crack with rom-coms. But this involved some reporter, me times 10. And he is infesting himself in these various situations, even Buckingham Palace and a movie set. And of course, he is a scum-sucking reporter doing what scum-suckers do. But along the way, single redeeming quality, that is a matchmaker.
And you touched on it there. Movie Rogue is based on a true story. What is the truth then?
It is true. This story was told to me by a fellow scum sucker when I was on the Sun, who had been a showbiz reporter with me when I'd worked on Bizarre Cop on the Sun, Piers Morgan. And we were quite good mates. But anyway, he continued with showbiz, snorting like stars, and I had come to New York for the Sun. Anyway, I came back from New York, and Sean and I had a drink. He told me this weird story, how he had been an extra on Stanley Kubrick, what turned out to be Stanley Kubrick's last film, Eyes Wide Shut, in the most eye-popping scene of the orgy scene of Eyes Wide Shut. Eyes Wide Shut is their sort of middling film, but the orgy scene lasts about 3 minutes. It is like holy smoke. It's extraordinary. Anyway, so he told me this, and because tabloid reporters was trying to infest all movie sets of big films, and Eyes Wide Shut ticked a lot of boxes because it had Tom Cruise on it, and it had Tom Holland on it, and it also had the craziest director on earth, Stanley Kubrick. And so that's what Sean told me, and then eventually I thought I could turn it. And Sean, unfortunately, he's not around anymore. He's dead. So this means it gives you a certain amount of license to do what you want with the story, as I have done.
Eyes Wide Shut. It is, like you say, the last Kubrick film. It's quite like a cult film in many ways, but it is a quote-unquote masterpiece for critics and film fans alike. What mainly intrigued you about Eyes Wide Shut? Firstly, like the time when that person was telling you about this production that was up and coming, wanting to write in Ruby Road. Why do you think it is such good source material as far as that goes?
Kubrick is considered by the people in the movie world as being one of the great directors. I'm not one of these people. He had a few bangers, but Eyes Wide Shut is middling. It's a really niche film. But what it has in it is this crazy director, Kubrick, who was just completely weird. And most film shoots last top whack 3 months. And I was just reading about The Godfather. 60 days shooting. Anyway, Eyes Wide Shut has the all-time record yet to be touched for the longest shoot in history. 400 days back to back. You think you're going off for the weekend? No way, sailor. No, we got to carry on. So he's got 400 days, and he's got these two mega stars who are then married to each other, Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. I think effectively he broke up them. To this country. They will carry on shooting. Is done with them. Most shoots you'd sign up for 2 or 3 months so that you could start doing that. They commit to. We'll just carry on going until you are done with us. And boy, did he put them through the ring. Because what happened with Kubrick shoots was every film he did got longer and longer and longer. And ultimately, he got Tom Cruise to walk through a doorway 95 times. Just for the fucking hell of it. I mean, what's the point of that? Tommy's probably pretty good at going through a doorway. Could probably do it about once or twice. Fine, we got that one. Nope, I'm going to keep on, because I'm the director, I'm going to get him to go through the door. So he had a lot of form for breaking down stars. On The Shining, his horror film, with Shelley Duvall in the critical scene when she's trying to fight off Jack with a baseball bat. 120 takes. And he also got said to the crew, nobody can speak to her, just to make sure she was alienated. And you know what? We're going to get her crying all the time. And so by the time she's coming into the actual critical scene, she's had her brain fried by this guy. And so this is effectively what Kubrick, Tom, and in the scene, say, cut, do it again. Do it again. Just 95. And then there was one little kiss scene in this orgy scene where the whole story is set. The kiss lasts about maybe 10 seconds. Tom Cruise is kissing this model. And that took 4 days. That was a good 100 takes. Easy. Do it again. So this is all part of the weird stuff to weave into the story.
Yeah, I mean, some people are absolutely obsessed with Kubrick and, would say that he makes the perfect film. I mean, personally, I think your point about Godfather, a smidgen of the time that it would take Kubrick to film even that scene would actually be testament to the fact that maybe he's actually more obsessive than he is perfect. Do you think he was a genius or madman?
Look, Kubrick, definitely, he is a genius. But like a lot of geniuses, he disappeared up his own fundament. He started believing everything. I'm God, I've got the two. He was eager to the two hospitals at the time, 10 years ago, Tom and Nicole. He was desperate, and now he's got complete power because as you are called all the goddamn I'm shocked. You could be a superstar, director, and you've signed off and say you've got to do it again. I don't. He had some great films, but for me, Eyes Wide Shut is middling, and the story is just completely. It's from Dream Story, which would have disappeared without Trey. Is it a dream? Is it not a dream? Do we care? So yeah, I'm just the story is just concentrating on this. Last 4 minutes. It took months. It took to the entirety of the Godfather, which was a lot.
Probably my favorite in the book is protagonist Kim is in the toilets of the RAC, and he nips off to the loo. He's on kind of a boozy lunch with one of his superiors, and he overhears a conversation between two gentlemen about the filming of said orgy scene in Elvenhall. Elvenhall, and this big, and up until that point, this film has been super secretive. There is a bit of reality in that, because part of the reason I think the movie wrote is that the previous film Kubrick does, Full Metal Jacket, he worked on it for years and years and years, 4 years, and then along comes Oliver Stone, makes Platoon in about a quarter of the time. Platoon goes on to win the Best Picture, win all the Oscars. Kubrick is actually driven mad by the fact that his masterpiece has been superseded by Platoon. That is, I guess, part of the reason why Eyes Wide Shut was such a top secret.
Yeah, it was super secretive about it. Some reporters, tabloid reporters, get their stories in a number of ways. It's surprising how many stories would come about from just being in a toilet cubicle. There you are, minding business, and people start talking because they think they're alone. You might have to raise your feet up so they can't see anyone's there. And so the whole story starts in the RAC, which bizarrely, the chief reporter of the Sun used to take me to the RAC to wine and dine his contacts. And this was a guy called John Kay. And I would be his sort of lieutenant, safe pair of hands, not going to plan. And he was super charming. More like an ambassador than sort of the chief reporter of the Sun, super and all the rest of it. And what a lot of people could not believe, and it was like a completely taboo subject. You know how you might talk about, the taboo subject. This one was a taboo subject. I was great mates with this guy. I sat next to him for 4 years. I learned the silver tongue from him, which is how to charm on the phone. But I could never, ever say to him, what happened when you drowned your first wife? So you knew about this crazy story about John first going to the loony bin and then coming back to the Sun. He was allowed back to the Sun, where he became chief reporter, on condition that he never ever went out on the story. So when the big story happened, he was like the big spider, pulling all the copy. But anyway, we never did out.
On that note, Kim is quoted in the book. You quote Prince Harry describing a Sun journalist as a piece of scum-sucking pond life.
Say what?
In your career as a journalist, you were New York correspondent, and the Royal Reporter. Surely you reject such characterization of yourself.
Dear old Prince Harry. Prince Harry, as you probably know, is currently he's putting the Daily Mail through the bill. he along with John and Liz Hurley and the other clients are suing the men because the reporters, unable to get the dirt on these celebrities, had hired private investigators to do the dirt digging themselves. So the reason he's not suing the Sun is because he tried to, but the Sun bastards unfortunately settled and paid him tons of money. So he didn't get his day in court, but now he is getting his day in court with Mel. Yeah, he certainly hates me because, I mean, I'm not just a scum sucker. I'm an old Etonian scum sucker. It's like I went along to his own school. So he would be. I don't think he'd like me much. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think one thing which I really like about the Rogue series in general is that they are written almost which I actually think overall that was a really fun time for entertainment and media. Back in the movie Rogue, not to spoil it, but we start to see of not just injunctions but super injunctions, which actually was a whole load of water over this quite nice fire. Could you have written them at any other time? I mean, you couldn't. It wouldn't be as fun, would it, if you infiltrating the set of one battle after another or something like that. You know, what would he be there? Be out there anyway, you know, and him with his spy pen in his pocket trying to get these pictures and stuff.
Yeah.
What would be the point?
Yeah, tabloid journalism. Oh, certainly with newspapers is an irrelevance now. You know, the Sun then 30 years ago, on a good day, would have a circulation of, which is a readership of about 12 million. That's nearly a fifth of the country. Now, only 30 years later, it's so embarrassing they will not reveal the figures, but they are way less than 1 million. So no people under the age of 30 are really buying tabloids. They're getting their stuff on the phone.
Yeah, I mean, the Brooklyn Beckham fiasco. I mean, no one in this room will have read that on the front of the paper. You know, that was the show. Nevertheless, you do write a connection between the tabloids and Hollywood, saying that movie directors are not so very different from tabloid editors. In another life, could Kubrick have been your mad master at the Sun, demanding that copy in?
Yeah, he could have been. I mean, the analogy about movie directors and edited tabloids is they are answerable to pretty much no one. I mean, like the Sun editor is answerable to Rupert Murdoch, but beyond that, the Sun is their fiefdom. And if they say jump, you say how high. They can order their reporters and photographers around to do anything they damn want, and you better do it. And if you don't want to do it, then you're. And it's the same on a movie set. These directors shots have your meal break, turn up, and when you clock off, and they call everything. And I was still do a bit of extra work, and I was doing some stuff for Blood of My Blood, which is the prequel to Outlander, and it was at a place just near Edinburgh called Hopetoun House. At the call time, that's the time you want to check in. The director says 4:30. That is pokey. Whatever they want.
Set there on the outskirts of Edinburgh. The location of Movie Road, 11 Hole. It's Hollywood, dare I say it. It is for an orgy. It is this massive grand room. You know, where else better to set it? Have you visited?
I try to get along.
Why do you think Kubrick decided on that? Because he moved having to wait weeks to keep the hall so cold and in the orgy, nudity, warm, etc.
Yeah. What Elven Hall, which is this place on this side, Norfolk border. You've probably been there. and it's vast, and it was pretty derelict, and it took well over a week to heat the place up because the girls were stripped to these wonderful masks and stilettos, and that's it. And nippy for them. We're not working in this, so they spent weeks just practicing, rehearsing in tracksuits, black tracksuits.
And you mentioned your work as an extra. If you were to be an extra on any other Kubrick film, which one would you choose? I guess to be the first one, to be the shortest.
No, I want to be on The Shining. That's a
Really?
great one. Yeah, I want to be the Bowen on The Shining, or in the bar with Jack when he's going nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see you on the film.
Okay. That's quite a niche film. I'll tell you a great Barry Lyndon story. Barry Lyndon was one of his first films, Kubrick's first films, and it's quite a long one, and not that many people have seen it. But anyway, it stars Ryan O'Neal, a megastar. He was in Love Story. Thank you. Anyway, Barry Lyndon, at the end of, I'd be surprised if anybody seen it, but at the end of it, unfortunately, Ryan O'Neal loses his leg. That's in the character, Barry Lyndon loses his leg. No. And anyway, towards the end of the film, Kubrick says to Ryan O'Neal, "Hey, Ryan, I booked you into a Swiss clinic." And Ryan O'Neal says, "A Swiss clinic." He says, "To get your leg chopped off for the end of the movie." And Ryan says, "Well, that sounds a bit unnecessary. Do we have to?" And this is the bit I'm not sure about. Is Kubrick just mucking around with him? Or serious? Either are quite possible. He says, "But geez, I don't know how else to do it."
On Kubrick, I think he is probably the most fascinating character in the book. And along with that, on Eyes Wide Shut, Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman are great as a poet. But there's so many layers to Kubrick. He contains multitudes. It is hinted at in the book. It is maybe revealed at the end. There is hints of Kubrick potentially having a body double and things like that. And there's a bit of exploration into kind of, because Kubrick is a person who carries a lot of baggage. There's a lot of, dare I say, conspiracies about his films, about him as an individual. Did you have fun going into that, writing about potential double?
Of course, when I decided to do this thing, I immersed myself in the magical Kubrick earth of films and ate all these books about him. And there are a lot of weird theories about Kubrick. These are just theories and, just hearsay. But he's dead. I'm going to take the whole lot. Thank you. One of the theories was that he was this pretty rotund. He looked like a tramp. If he came into the place in his gear tonight, you'd turn him away. You'd say, "I'm sorry, sir, I'm afraid you've had enough drink."
Everyone is welcome to Foster.
Anyway, so he. Sorry, where the hell was I? Oh yeah, we were talking about his general madness.
It's just the layer of the baggage that comes with him. He is almost a mythical director. In that
anyway, the point was that he's about 70. He's a complete rotund slob who sits in his Winnebago reading copies of the Lady magazine and porn magazines, which he was addicted to. And he's got this completely punishing schedule, age 70, and he just likes being there, just reading his magazines and the rest of it. And there was this kind of suggestion that Kubrick was only managing it because along the way he had acquired, like a lot of actors, he'd acquired a body double, and the body double was just standing for him. Just, okay, you go off and screw him around for the next 10 hours. Just say, do it again, and that's pretty easy. Do it again and do it again, and it was plausible and.
I mean, it's definitely feasible in the sense of in the book, the Glenn, the assistant director, seems to actually be the guy running the production. Whereas mainly with Kubrick, we get a kind of check. I will do it again. I'll come back in an hour. So
this often happens on movies that the director is there in their little ivory tower. One was a weird Netflix one, and the director was this quite petite woman, aged 75, who was about 5 foot tall, and she's like in a little. And her assistant director, the lieutenant, he was this giant who was about 6'6", and and the director would then say, "Could you all please shut up?" Because that's what happens on movie sets. All the extras, they all start chatting. Then we get louder and louder and louder. Shut up. Start chatting.
I'm keen to open this up to the audience. Before I do, we have had Palace Row, we've had Eton Row, now Movie Row. Where will our protagonist go next?
Well, I was about 6 years ago. Margot and I were watching Wimbledon, and I said, "Wouldn't it be great to be a linesman?" And she said, "You are full of shit. You're always full of shit." And so the gauntlet was duly thrown down. What happened then was I applied to the World Tennis Association to be a linesman. And so I did the course. Then, lo and behold, I was going to tournaments in Glasgow, Sunderland, Grantham, blah, blah, all over the shop, learning how to be so much more than just saying a ball's out. And so there's a lot of technique to it. And then, anyway, the unbelievable thing happened that I got invited to Wimbledon. But even better than that, I was the last linesman because they were all dumped after they They do not need these guys like us. So, who would have thought it? The next one coming out in June 1st is Wimbledon Road. And I can tell you, for those ones, I'm going to be wearing my gear. 1,000 quid's worth of Ralph Lauren. And it is quite possible that the World Tennis Association will give me the boot.
Well, everyone's been replaced by robots like Cassidy, so it'll be privileged on their point. I mean, you're not suggesting that a crucial decision, going in the way of Novak, man who's just using.
Well, that is, funny enough, that is the entire secret of Wimbledon. And what was happening when I was to Wimbledon, it's got all these tunnels. It's just fascinating, all this sort of detail. It's really cool. Sometimes these guys say saying this really weird stuff. It's like, I can't remember, excuse me. Run off, scribble, come back. Okay, we listen to all this stuff, and then so I'm writing all this stuff down, and then on about the second Monday, I go to my team, and they're hanging out with for bacon roll, like I said, morning to, and then one of them says, "Hey, Bill, we know what you're doing." And I said, "What am I doing?" you're writing a book about this. And I say, well, I mean, I'm very flattered that you think that, but actually, there's, there have been line umpires at Wimbledon for 150 years, and nobody has ever managed to write a book about being a line because it's so bloody boring. And to be able to write a book about being a line umpire, you just have to be a complete genius to do that. And guys, I just don't really have the skills.
They should look at it a different way. I mean, you're going to preserve their history as well.
Yeah, exactly. Though, unfortunately, I just heard from the dear old Lawn Tennis Association, my pal Matthew Morris, who decides because although they've got a bit of line umpires, they still have this wonderful matches, which is the greatest gig around. And I could train any of you to be a match assistant in 5 minutes flat. Open the can of balls without cutting yourself. That's it. Oh, and escort a player to the toilet. Mr. Djokovic got into the facility. You had 3 minutes remaining. That's it. That's all you have to do. It's a complete thing. But anyway, you get this free, you get holiday, this New Year night. And you get asked to all over the place. Anyway, I've just been told by the LTA that I am so not going to be a match assistant, even though I am an L1 line umpire, which that doesn't get any higher. That is the gig. And so I've been taking, well, I might along just in case the book does not incense them enough. I'm going to have a pop in the Daily Mail. And I'm, which will be tennis umpire Harry Kieran. And the line umpires was a huge mistake. It's better theatre with bees like me mucking up. That's the story. And that it will be
Well, I agree with you on that. I mean, any football fan will know how much VAR has absolutely killed the game. So, one man over human umpires at Wimbledon. Okay, we'd like to open this up.
First of all,
hang
on. One thing.
Okay.
What was happening was when I was giving student lecture, we'd end with the questions. And invariably, the last question would be a bit of a downer. So now, we the shark teeth. These are fossilized shark's teeth, 50 million years old. And you take 2 or 3 or 4 as a little memento of this. And then you will hear the story of the shark's teeth.
Nice. First question.
Yes, Margot. This is Margot, my wife, by the way. The one who got me into the whole. This is the person who inspired me to be a lineup. Yeah, great.
About his in the film, because I was thinking, when did he start getting his own power? Did he know power at all at that time? I can't even remember what stage he was at in his career.
Tom Cruise was a giant. The only reason that Kubrick wants him because he and Nicole were the most powerful couple in Hollywood. He'd just done Mission Impossible. He was stellar. He was the greatest director of all time. It would be a pleasure to work with you with this never-ending contract. I don't think Tommy quite realised that the shoot might extend to 400 days, because what's happening is all the other guys are wanting to do Mission Impossible 2, all the other films that they're all being backed up. Sorry guys, I can't sign on because Kubrick's got me in this blind. I can't sign up for anything until I'm released. So yeah.
Also, I think that's the last time that Tom Cruise
really actually has a lot to see Roll. Really. I mean, after that, he does The Last Samurai, and then every single mission is 12, and then it's just the superhero action. You never really place anyone with any layering to them.
This Tommy Cruise generally likes roles which are a whole load of, particularly he loves running. And in this one, it's all very slow, with Tommy doing nothing at all. Okay, must be an unbelievable.
Questions, bro?
Yes.
And
Because I'm a dinosaur and I'm writing about dinosaur times.
I wonder how you write the future book, how you use that sense of nostalgia of the previous books, and whether you have to give a more glaring lens of the industry that you've worked on.
You mean, am I going to start writing stuff set today?
Yeah.
It's going to be bloody tricky. Because the journalism that I knew is dead. You get poor little reporters who file their stories. That's fine. I'm done. I'm out of here. Off to the bar. Now you've got to do interviews and little films and that. It's a nightmare. It's now 20 rolling news for people like you. There's no bar again. You, my friend.
I know.
No.
It's a great shame. I mean, you know, I think I can't remember the last time that there has been a front page that has actually caught attention up until whatever last week, and the Sun came out with Andrew back, and they go, "No, he's better." And I think that's the first time in a long time that people have actually have you seen that front page?
Yeah, but actually, that joke was an internet joke.
Yeah.
You did Palace Road, obviously.
Yeah.
And you did give Andrew the best kind of portrayal of yourself. It's just not your moment.
Yeah. I wrote Palace Road, which Ryan Parrott can't write experiences anymore because he's got an injunction against. He can't write about it, and so. But I've taken the whole thing and just. I needed a villain in the book, and there are a number of villains, but Andrew was right up. And Prince Andrew has a number of very strange peccadillos, which I incorporated. There were all these damn teddies that he had in his bedroom that the maids had to, first of all, after he's got out of bed, they've all got to be, these 60 teddies have to be put in lines on the bed. Smallest, bigger, in lines, and then you get the biggest at the top, and then you got the two on a sort of chairs looking at each other. And then when he goes to bed, in order to prepare the bed, they all have to be transferred from the bed to the chimney, where they're just in this mantelpiece. And the maid has to do all this, and she'd go really mad. He would go mad with the maid if the teddies were not in the right place. You got the big ones around all. It's like, mate, if you feel so strongly about these damn teddies, then you can yourself, fine, knock yourself up. But you are not going to get a maid to move all your teddies. And there were it was actually a small scoop. There was a top Canadian model, and all these models would be whisked into Buckingham Palace in the 90s. And because he didn't drink, he's only getting his rocks off in one way, and that is with sex. That's
Teddy bear.
Sex and teddy bears. Yeah, I guess you can do a lot with a teddy bear. So anyway, he needed to be my villain for Palace Rogue, and he was going to do some pretty spicy stuff. Unfortunately, I mentioned it in the book. But it is impossible. This was even 6 years ago. It is impossible to libel Prince Andrew because that means damage their reputation. And it short of you cannot damage the guy's reputation anymore. This was even 6 years ago before this huge tsunami that's engulfed him. And as we say, it could not have happened to another chap.
It's fair game. It's fair game for a straightforward shooting weekend. Dexter,
This is my elder son.
it's been our last question. If anyone else has got a question,
I mean, I had an original, but do you think that with this Andrew debacle that we are seeing now, do you think that that is the whole truth?
What you mean? Is there more stuff going to come out about Andrew?
All the rest.
Yeah, that might well be. I mean, no, Andrew's the only one who's been involved with Epstein, and Andrew's the one who's been put through.
Assume that they can all control the media.
They can't control.
stress that this is an active court case.
Andrew was all, Look, let me explain something about the just. Do you think it's this thrilling? I don't know. Lot these guys do this wonderful stuff. With people a bit more money, licking their royal family. He's bloody great for the soap opera. Meghan Markle was fantastic. What you need just to to explain basic stuff. What you need for a soap opera is friction. Meghan came along. No friction there at all. When she came along, she starts scrapping with Kate and the rest. It was like manna from heaven for the tabloid editors, and it's an ongoing scrap. So you can see it going on forever. I mean, when William becomes king, it will be brilliant. Same with that. Yeah. It's
One follow up.
Okay, so you said that Sam's essentially the greatest director of all time.
well, some would say.
Some would say, and Eyes Wide Shut is considered as potentially his best film.
No, certainly not.
Why not?
Because it's a really boring story.
Why is it a boring story?
It's about a dream, and you know how somebody said, "Let me tell you," but it was all of his film. I'd say in the.
I mean, the source material dream story is two doctors. They come back together. They come. I think one of them is just to climb a really tall mountain. This is Arthur Schnitzler book, which no one by fucking Kubrick. And it's a rumor that he bought up all the copies of the story so that no one else could read it and nick his idea. And the partner, the other doctor, goes, "Well, I'd like to have an affair with one of your mates or something." He then goes out in a huff, ends up being propositioned by the first patient, the daughter of the first patient that he treats. Other people proposition him. He then ends up in this orgy scene, and really, nothing happens. He doesn't actually necessarily interact. A bit like Eyes Wide Shut. There was the kiss from Tom Cruise, but there's no real involvement. And then he gets back. They come back into the room. "How was your evening?" "Yeah, forget about it." And that's kind of like Eyes Wide Shut. I mean, the final scene of them, in the shopping together in the store. It's just a little line from the cool kid. It's an anticlimactic film in many ways. It's about the sexual
So buy the book, but don't necessarily see. You see the wow. That's my kind of orgy.
And to wrap up, we have given out some. Oh, one last question.
I was going to say, there's been recently some great film adaptations of
Well, I'll tell you. Eton College is, without doubt, the world's most famous school. I'm the only damn oldie Tony to write 3 damn novels that are set there. And there's never been a best-selling book about Eton, or certainly not a film, TV, or anything like it. And so Eton, there is a sort of global fascination in all these damn poshos in their good suits. And so one of them is a love affair that's set there, a boy and his piano mistress. That is easy to do, and it's about Eton, and that could be a game. And it's been a lot of bosses will say, yes, it's been an option. Big option means you get some money. No way means that the movie is going to be made. And so hopefully it will happen before I am dead.
And on that note, Shark Teeth.
Shark Teeth! Hopefully you will have got some of these fossilized shark's teeth. Now if you have a really good run, you will probably have another years before you're ready and just cooking in your own kitchen rather than for mugs like us. Okay. These shark's teeth in the palm of your hand are a million years old. They are from the Atlas Mountains, about a mile up, from days, obviously 50 million years ago, when the sea was above. And they are just a little reminder to get going while you can. Now, some young people, they say to me, so if we're going to be dead in 100 years' time, and extremely in 50 years' time, what's the point? And the point is that you have to do anything at all. You want to get on and do it now, because we don't have long. That is the point. Do it while you can.
You'll be able to buy copies of Movie Road, Eton Road, next time we're selling them. Yeah, and I'll take your way down to the bar. See you all down there. Thank you very much.